We got Darren Wyatt running for sheriff. Mr. Kimball running for governor as well. And I want to bring up our guest speaker, Brent Bien. Most of you know Brent. He's been here a couple times before in the past. He's a good guy, lives up at Cody. He's running as governor. He needs money to win the election. That's all I'm going to say. Bring up Brent.
Thanks, Larry. Oh man, it is good to be back down here in Laramie. It's been a while. This is my hometown. I actually was born here many moons ago. It's good to be back here with you guys, and I appreciate the invitation, Jerry, Roxy. This is great. All those running for office, we'll talk about this more a little bit later, but that's what we need. And just one question about this watershed tax, and that's exactly what it is. What's the purpose of it? Where's the money go? Does anybody know that?
The purpose of it is to raise $135 million to repair Laramie storm sewers.
So then once the storm sewers are repaired, I can't imagine that the tax is going to be rescinded, right?
There's no sunset. There's no sunset.
Yeah, that's the way it always works, right? All right, so again, you guys, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity tonight. And Jerry and I have been talking over the last several months to come down, and I just say, just throw it on the calendar, I'll get down. So it was a great day to drive today. There's a little construction on the way coming down, but no issue. So first off, just to set the stage, and I think everybody's on the same sheet of music here, but I just want to make sure that there are only two sexes, male, female, and a man cannot have a baby. Right? And we live in the least racist nation in the history of the world. We just do. And it's great to live here. And of course, the one false narrative that's out there that's probably the most dangerous, okay, is that we are a democracy, right? We are a constitutional republic, but if you talk to all these kids coming out of school, okay, they will tell you that we live in a democracy. Okay, where 51% of the people can take away the liberties of the other 49. Well, we don't. Okay, and you guys know this, we live in a constitutional republic where even the 99% cannot take away the liberties of that 1%. So a week ago, we celebrated the 135th anniversary of Wyoming. Right. Okay. Forever 44, right? Not the bomb, 44th state. So that's all right, so yeah, like Jerry said, it's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces in here. I know it's been a while since I've been down here, but we've had a lot of interaction though since the last election because of so many things that we've done statewide with ballot initiatives, those kind of things. And we're working some other ones here too with that require about voting. So just a very quick background, guys, because my wife always tells me that I need to talk about my background. I don't like talking about my background, but I just throw it out there real quick. So yes, I was born here in Laramie. I'm a native of Laramie. I didn't necessarily grow up here. My father was a Marine Corps officer, and he, later an executive for Mount Bell, which is the U.S. West. So we spent the time in North Carolina, a little bit there at Camp Lejeune, and then of course between Colorado and New Mexico. But we'd always keep our ties here. And there's some longtime friends with my folks up here with the Mars and so on. And Halsey's here that we've had for many, many years. So it's so good to be back here. When I had the chance, the opportunity to come back, I did. Went to UW, went through the engineering college, and graduated in '91. And on that same day, I was commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps. And I had no intention of spending 28 and a half years being a Marine. But I went off, and what a privilege it was, okay, to serve this country. And I will tell you, the oath that I took way back when, okay, on May 11th of 1991, right over here at UW, that oath does not expire, folks. It just doesn't. Okay? And that's why I'm here now. And really the reason why I truly am here is because I do not trust anybody with my liberty anymore. I don't. And I don't trust them with your liberty. Okay, I've seen what's going on in this state. We see what's happened in this nation. Okay, and this is why it's so fantastic that all of you are here, why these candidates are here, to run, okay, to make a difference, to get out there, call out the issues, and call out the solutions to make this happen. But anyway, my whole time in there, good to go. I kept my residency for three primary reasons. One, I called it my Wyoming citizenship, because there's no greater state in the nation. 2, the best hunting and fishing around. Now, I never really got back there to hunt and fish, but it was one of those things. And then 3, I had a really low number on my 5-county tag, which I still have. And it's 44, right? It's my truck tag is 544. So real quick, when I came back, I retired, and I'm too young to retire, but I retired out of the Marine Corps at the end of 2019 and moved to Sheridan. My wife wasn't too fond of the wind down here, right? So we moved up there. So I picked up a job up there with Bighorn Airways, flying around, and they were real good to me because I was renovating a home, so it was kind of more of a part-time type of job, and it was real good with these guys. I was the director of safety standardization, working with them. But because I had a 5-county tag, and these are blue-collar pilots, right? Great guys we were flying together, and they called me a Southerner. And I'm like, you guys show me where the Mason-Dixon line is in Wyoming. Where's that Mason-Dixon line? But anyway, because that's 3 county up there. But anyway, great guys. But I will tell you, the turning page, the turning point, whatever you want to call it, for me, was our response as a state to COVID. Okay, when I sat there and I thought, for 28 and a half years, I put my rear end on the line for that sacred document, series of documents in D.C., only to come back here to this state and have my liberties restricted by this governor. And this was never a bucket list thing for me to do, folks. I guarantee it wasn't. And I looked, I talked to our legislators, I talked to some legislators around the state that I kind of knew. Of course, they know all these guys a lot better now. To try to get somebody to run. And it all came down to the fall of 2021. Late fall, early winter, whatever, at a school board meeting up in Manchester, which is way up north, just north of Sheridan. And talking with one of my legislators, and I said, you got to do it. He was the last one. He said, no, Brent, I'm not going to do it. And I said, well, screw it, I'm going to do it. And I didn't necessarily say screw it, but I said, I'm going to do it. And I said, nobody knows now. But so we started off in March of 2022, and my wife and I put 75,000 miles on her in about 5 months. And the whole thing there is we live in the greatest state, the greatest nation in the history of the world. But when you see what happens around the world, okay? Again, I supported combat operations in Bosnia in the mid-90s, Kosovo in the late 90s, okay? And then, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan. And you really see the world the way it really is. And you realize just how sacred it is, this incredible privilege we have of being an American. And it just disturbed me so much how quickly people gave up their liberties during COVID. Now, I got the first couple of months. I got it. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. But this thing just kept continuing. And we heard about how bad it was, how bad you were if you didn't get the vaccine, everything else. So, bottom line is we've been very involved here. And, throughout the state. We started an outfit called VCR Voter Initiatives. Okay, and that's rocket science for Brent, Cheryl, and Rich. And we met in December of 2022 over intensely with the Daily Bread. The 3 of us sat there. And we thought, if we can't change Wyoming from Cheyenne, we'll do it from our living room. So we spent about 4 hours going through what we thought were the top priorities in the state. And we all had different opinions. But when it came down, narrowing it down to the top 3, that's what it was. Okay, it was elections. Really, the top 2, elections and taxes, that were killing people. That I had learned as I traveled all over the state the last time. And everybody in here who supported me the last time, I greatly appreciate it. Everybody in here, how many circulators do we have for the ballot initiative? Okay, there are several in here. Thank you very much for doing that. So the ballot initiative, we decided to go with taxes, right? Because everybody deals with tax. Everybody's real familiar with tax, whether it's sales tax, ad valorem, use tax, whatever it is, property tax. People are familiar with tax. Okay, so it was one of those things like, okay, let's do this, let's knock it out. And we did. So the first time since the mid-90s, we're going to have an initiative on the 2026 ballot to cut residential property taxes by 50% of the assessed value of the primary residence and Wyoming residents. Okay, that's great. You guys did it. Okay, you guys did it. So, Now, we're working on two other ones. Okay, one is with Joe Kaufman here in Cause of America. She's down from Black County. Fantastic. And this has to do with our elections, okay, our machines. All right. And really, over the past year, 2 years, really, we've probably trained about 2,000 people across the state on a real simple procedure on that hand count. Okay. And so we're looking at that as an option, as an alternative method to this ES&S system that we have right now. And also, we're looking at running one too, because the legislature wouldn't push it through. And they also, there were two bills that had to do with that, with elections, that very topic, this last session. Of course, it didn't go anywhere. And then we were also working on one to defund all these taxpayer associations. Yeah. And I tell you, we can talk more about this at, offline, whatever you want to do. But, what we've seen is we know that whether they're the clerks, the assessors, the county commissioners, there's all these associations, okay? Look, and they belong to these things. Okay, I don't have any problem belonging to an association, okay, but the taxpayer should not be funding these associations. And that's the issue. All right, so anyway, that's in the works. I wanted to get that out there. What I will tell you, folks, is that I believe God has given us a second chance. I really do with the 2024 election. And I have never been so happy to be so wrong in my life. Because based on 2020, I was thinking, I don't think he's going to do it. So as the results came in, I mean, I'm sure like you guys, I was ecstatic. But the thing is regardless of what President Trump says, he can go up there and say all these grandiose things, and they're fantastic. But until the states codify what he wants to get done, and this is why we were so hard on the legislature this year. Okay, we were so hard. I got legislators right now that still appeal at me for what I'm going after. I'm like, look, you have got to codify this stuff. You have to. We have a finite amount of time because there's no guarantee that somebody who thinks like Trump is going to come in after it. And if the states don't codify, because we know that our Constitution was written to empower the states and, by extension, us, right, over the federal government. So until these states start standing up and exercising their sovereignty, as soon as he's gone or whoever replaces him, whether they think like him or not, we're just going to revert back to where we were. Okay, that's why it's so important. And I tell you guys, and you know the deal because you're here, it starts at the local level. I mean, hands down it does. Okay, so I do believe that we can fix this nation. But I tell you what, if we can't, we have to fix Wyoming first. I believe this state, if we can fix Wyoming, we can fix America. And I firmly believe that we can do this. Now, I'm taking a different approach, and this is not a campaign stunt speech. This is one of those things that a lot of retrospection, whatever you want to call it, based on the last time, taking a look at things, and of course it was a very short, when you're going up against somebody who's worth $250 million as a military retired, it's kind of tough, right? And especially when you got all the money in the world. But again, thanks to so many folks in here, we got the message out. Okay, and nothing's really changed. Okay, I still want Wyoming, hands down, to be the freest state in the nation. And folks, we're not even close. You would think we were, but we're not. But the way to do this and the way to fix Wyoming is to return this state to the people. We have to do that. This is a government state. I mean, we have the biggest government, state government per capita in the nation. So we have somehow got to get this back in check. So when I say, and I always go around saying, hey, make Wyoming number one. Now I've been saying this for quite a few years, and it's like, you know what, that's what we got to do. Okay, we should accept nothing but excellence in government. We should expect, and we should hold all our electeds accountable. Okay, we're talking about this watershed tax, and it is a tax, folks. And what I challenge you to do is look at Wyoming Statute 15, Tac 4, Tac 110, see if there's any validity there to be able to recall these folks. Okay, because when you start to talk about constitutional issues, okay, it's worth it. And even if you posture simply saying, we're going to recall your can, okay, let me tell you, it'll put fear of God in it, right, when you start doing it. But it is about mobilizing and doing this. Now that recall, and we'll talk about this here in a second, that's because it's part of returning elections to the people. So when I say return Wyoming to the people, I'm specifically meaning Number one, returning elections to the voters. Number two, okay, returning education to the parents. Number three, returning taxes to the taxpayer. Number four, returning agriculture to the grower. And number five is returning energy to Wyoming. That's what I'm talking about with all these things. Now, specifically, when I talk about returning elections to the voters, I'm talking about runoff elections. I mean, every person in this room, every person who votes, deserves the best candidate, most qualified candidate who gets 51% of the vote. Hands down. Okay, not 30%, not whatever. I mean, we need to have runoffs where we get the best candidates. Recall elections, we just talked about that. That needs to be expanded to the top 5. Hand tabulation, again, we talked about this as primary means. We need legislative confirmation of our judgeships, for crying out loud. The people have to be involved in this. Most people don't really pay attention to judges on a ballot. That's why somehow we've got to get them in, have the legislature at a minimum confirm these judgeships. And of course, accountability across all of our elections. We have never done an audit in this state, or at least we couldn't find record of doing an election audit in this state. Now, I will tell you that our Secretary of State is trying to get a lot of this stuff done, and I commend him for it. But there's a lot of things that we got to do to help him get this stuff done, and it all starts at the executive. Okay, regardless of whoever the leader is, sets the tone for this state and for anything else you do. Okay, when I say return education to the parents, there is no reason why our kids are not leading the nation. Okay, in math, science, reading, history, civics proficiency across the board. We need to reintroduce critical thinking in our classroom. I mean, these kids can't critically think, right? They're indoctrinated. They're not taught to think. They're taught to, just kind of go along with whatever's going on out there. Now, it's unconstitutional to have sectarian curricula in our schools. We've got it. Okay, and we've got to get that out of there. It has to be more pro-American. Reinstitute this whole thing of cursive writing, for crying out loud, right? Personal responsibility. I know, that's crazy. A lot of these kids don't know how to write cursive. And there's a reason for that, right? If you can't do that, you can't read our founding documents, right? And then, of course, when it comes down to the courts, and Roxy knows, a little shorthand. I mean, how are you going to do that, when you're doing that in the court system? Now, the big thing here, I think, is, and this kind of goes back to a few years ago when I was still in the Marine Corps. Because the Marine Corps never really had a problem with recruiting, but when the numbers get tight, you sit there and you kind of look at it going, okay, why are we having this problem with getting these folks in? Right? Now, we saw under the Biden administration, the Marine Corps is barely hanging on. All the other branches of service, could not get it. Okay, and it's all this DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's poison. It's all based on Marxism, right? We know that, right? A classless society with equal outcome. Equality is one thing. Equity is something completely different. I mean, we are the equality state, right? We don't want to be the equity state. But the big thing here, and the reason why there's such a drive for and demand for charter schools or school choice or ESAs, education savings accounts, is because the schools, basically, our education system, has lost the trust of the parents. I mean, they really have. It's kind of like when you're recruiting. Their numbers are down. It's amazing how much influence parents have, on these young guys coming into the military or gals. Well, it's the same thing with education, right? I mean, when we're failing as a whole, nationwide, and the good thing is, Trump's paving the way to right now get rid of the Department of Education, which I think is fantastic. So we need to back that up, right? Be right behind it. The teachers need to be able to teach. Okay, we got to stop this bureaucratic nonsense. So we've got this huge bureaucracy up there. All the teachers, nearly every teacher with whom I've spoken across the state, every corner of the state, all they want to do is teach. But we got to make sure these teachers are qualified, right, to teach our kids these kind of things. Okay, get rid of the bureaucracy. And I will tell you, I know we're a land grant state, guys, but I tell you, I do believe funding for education should be all performance-based. I really do. Okay, taxes to the taxpayer. We can talk about this all night. It's probably one of my favorite ones, but we're not going to do that. You guys, we just heard about the watershed taxes. There's taxes all over the place. This is what's killing people. And one of the, the main reason we ran the ballot issue, okay, to reduce residential property tax, were three reasons, primarily. One, of course, is to keep people in their home. Two, is to figure out where every elected official stood on taxes. Okay, that's commissioners, that's council, that's our legislators, that's our top five. And folks, we know where they all stand now. We know everybody stands on this. And we have all those pro tax cut guys, and next thing you know, they weren't supporting this at all. Right? I mean, some of these things surprised the heck out of me. I couldn't believe it. And the last reason was to show folks that, we can't fight back on this stuff. But when I'm listening to folks talk about, hey, my Social Security is not enough to pay my property taxes. They may have raised their family in there for generations, and now they're losing their home. And it's heart-wrenching. Some of the stories that I've heard, and I'm like, okay, we have got to stop it. This is so un-Wyoming, so un-American. We've got to go after it right now. And really, if you look at the global plan on this, the plan is to, if you look through Agenda 2030 and what these guys are doing, their objective is to own 60% of the single-family homes across this country. Okay, not here in Wyoming. We cannot allow that to happen. So that's why we did that. But I will tell you right now, and I've talked to several legislators who are friends of mine, and these are the no kidding principled conservatives. We'll define that here in a second. And I said, you guys send me down there, I tell you what, you better doggone audit that budget. I want a wall-to-wall budgetary audit. I want to know the final resting place of every doggone tax dollar in this state. Because everybody in this room deserves to know where their tax dollars are going. We haven't done a budgetary audit in over 35 years. Okay, the last, back in the 80s, when we changed from the state examiner, right, to the state auditor's authorities were gutted. I know Christy Racines pretty well. We talk about these kind of things, and her hands are tied. She's not really an auditor, she's a comptroller, is really what she does now. So, because we haven't done an audit, even though we have an audit committee, we have no idea how much money it really takes to run this state. I have no idea. All we know is that we've got the largest state government per capita of any state in the nation. We've got, South Dakota has twice the population and half the budget. So, go figure, how does that work? All right. I would love to go transition to performance-based budgeting. And you look at all of our mineral wealth, you got to ask yourself, why in the world are we paying residential property tax in the first place? Right? Why are we? Ad valorem tax. There's so many things that we can cut. The taxes, so small business owners, any small business owners? Okay, so you have to collect the sales tax, you have to collect taxes from employees, you have to collect your workers' comp, those kind of things. Well, if you don't report that and give that to the state government, man, they'll come after you. But what you really are, don't take this wrong, you're an unpaid government employee, right? But you're really working for free on behalf of the government. So I do believe these small businesses should get tax cuts relative to how many employees they have, whatever they're doing. Because that, like I say, they are working on behalf of the government and getting nothing back for it. This 24-cent gas tax that was put on 2 governors ago, or at least 1 governor ago. Okay, to build 10 dams, I don't know what the original plan for it was. And we haven't built 10 dams. So where's all that money? We have some of the highest gas prices of the Midwestern states here. It's like, where'd that money go? So then we want a supplementary budget of $250 million or $225 million, or whatever it is, to fix the Brill Dam over there, up in Commerce County. It's like, wait a minute, wasn't that what this money was for? And then we came out real hard on the Senate. No property tax cut, no supplemental budget. Because we got to remember what supplemental budgets are for. They're for emergency situations, right? Special sessions or something like that. But because we've gotten so used to doing supplementary budgets, or supplemental budgets, we just keep doing it every other year. It's just like, okay, well, it's a status quo. For some reason, nobody wants to challenge that. Again, accountability in government. And one thing we were looking at here is with these watershed taxes, and I think Laramie County's looking at doing some of the same things. I'm looking over to Sweetwater County and some of this crazy stuff they're putting in over there. And they're doing this around the state. Now, we got to wonder why they're doing it. But I do know after this 25% tax cut that we received right on our property, with no backfill, which is good, because a true tax cut does not have an appropriation behind it, right? That was our biggest beef with the House, and going on with the Senate. Is, I do know for sure that there were several legislators that were talking about, we want to make this hurt. And it's like, why in the world would you say something like that? Well, they want to make it hurt, so nobody in this room votes for the tax ballot initiative, right? Nobody in this room pushes for more tax cuts. Okay, now, and I've been around several town halls around the state just to listen on, I guess the plight of local governments talking about how this is going to hurt them. I always hear about services that are going to get cut, but only one time from one gal up in Orland did I hear, well, I think I can cut this employee, and then that way we can still make all this work, if we start cutting down on people. Now, I only heard that one time. That's what we need. Somehow, we've got to get this government back in check. So it comes down to defining what's required, what are essential services, and what are non-essential services, and funding to them. And it is about accountability full on across the board. All right, continuing on here. Returning agriculture to the growers. I tell you, there's a reason why our growers, their suicide rate is surpassing that of veterans. We have backed these guys up against the wall. Okay, there's no incentive. These young folks, they're kids. There's no incentive to sit there and carry on these traditions. I mean, if you look at what's going on, being pushed to do RFID, right? Now, I know kind of got a little reprieve here, but I can tell you what, folks, we got to stop that. But the way to mitigate it is you make partnerships with all these surrounding states, Montana, South Dakota, Nebraska, that do beef, lamb, whatever it is, and you say, hey, I don't want any discrimination against our guys. Okay, we're not going to do RFID, period. We're not going to do it. But I want to make sure our guys are not punished for it, like they would be through federal government. Ad valorem, again, we talked about this before, but why, if you're a grower and you grow your own hay to feed your own cows, why in the world are you getting paid to charge an ad valorem tax? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Allodial titles, anybody know what that is? Okay, I'm sure there's folks here who own their property outright, right? That's great. Good on you guys. Unless you have an allodial title, all you have is a warranty deed on it. Okay, your actual title is sitting down with the assessor. So if for some reason you can't pay your taxes or something like that, they can get rid of your property out from underneath. And a allodial title, which I want to bring that process to this state, that if you own your land outright, your property, whatever it is, car, vehicle, home, anything else, that we get a process in place where you can apply for an allodial title and you get it, and you're free from any threat of eminent domain. I mean, it is yours. It is absolutely yours. There's a lot of this talk about private property rights, particularly with Wyomingites, which we may touch on here in a second. And I keep hearing this, well, private property rights. I got it. First off, is it really your property? Well, it kind of is. I mean, you're paying rent on your property, even if you own it outright. But with private property rights, obviously comes responsibility, particularly if it directly influences the value and or use of adjacent private properties, right? I mean, there's some ethical things there. But anyway, allodial titles is a big thing. Eminent domain, we really got to take another look at these laws and see what's going on. These have to be in favor of the landowners. They have to. We've got to take eminent domain authority away from corporations. Another thing too is any growers in here, ranchers? Okay. Yeah. So if your brand is registered in Cheyenne, why in the world would you need a permit to pay for a permit to take your stock from here to Converse County, from here to Natrona County? Why would you have to pay for that? Particularly if it's, and that's what I'm saying, is we nickel and dime our growers so much, their backs are up against the wall. We know where beef prices are. We know where lamb prices are. And then all of a sudden somebody like Next Era up at Chugwater comes in with this huge thing, hey, we'll give you all this money to put windmills on your property. And all of a sudden these growers are like, you know what, I can finally get a root. Or CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program, remember that was started back around Reagan. The best intentions, and of course it's morphed into something that's not necessarily Conservation Reserve Program. But you almost can't blame these guys. But it's like, well, wait a minute, What set the conditions there? We've got to go back, and guys, we can fix all of this. We can fix it all. All right. All right, so, okay, and then energy, of course, too, Wyoming. All right, what's the big energy issue right now? Coal. Coal? Nuclear? That's right. Okay, that's the big kind of thing going on right now. Anybody familiar with, everybody knows what's going on in Cameron, right? With the Natrium plant out there, the Bill Gates Natrium plant. If you guys are interested, there is a meeting, and I don't care, it's a long way from here, this coming week on the 22nd, okay, out there to discuss this. Okay, to discuss the, what's going on with that plant. There was just a meeting up in Barna, north of Casper, on Monday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to that one. I made it to the month before to discuss radiant energy, which is modular nuclear. Okay, now my stance on nuclear is simple. Okay, nobody does nuclear like the United States. Nobody does it better than we do. But before we get it in Wyoming, and I know that we need nuclear for energy dominance. But I tell you, the thing that's really making people mad about this whole thing is that they're the last to know. Right? They're the last to know. There's no plan for the nuclear waste. And I sure as heck don't want Wyoming to turn it into a nuclear waste dump. Right? And of course, we don't get any tax benefit off this stuff. So then what are we actually doing? So then the Wyoming Business Council goes up there and decides, okay, we're going to give Barna $25 million. Well, it's actually to benefit radiant energy. So I'm like, boy, that sure sounds like laundering money in a way, doesn't it? To do that. Would you do that for a mom and pop grocery store? Of course, probably not. And I throw that out there simply as conjecture. But it's just kind of one of those things. Is why are we picking winners and losers? The thing is this didn't just happen. This has been in the works for a long time. The same thing with all these wind farms. The same thing with all the solar farms. All this stuff's been in the work for a long time. You go back and you look up the environmental impact study, the EIS, for these things. Now, in all likelihood, it was done under a different company that went out of business or was bought out or whatever the deal is. But it's for the same piece of land. In fact, the one over in Chugwater was done back between 2009 and 2012. I mean, that was a long time ago. But the people over there didn't know that was going to happen. They didn't know all this stuff was going on. So it's one of those things. Transparency in government is absolutely essential because it comes back to that one word we already talked about, and that's trust. And I firmly believe that if somehow we can garner just a little bit of trust from the folks in this state, there is no question we can make this state #1 across the board. No question, but we need that trust. And then how green is this green energy? Right? Well, we were on tap with the last administration to spend about $50 trillion, right, by 2050, somehow lower the temperatures by Lord knows how much. We didn't know, nobody knew. But I mean, this is the biggest lie, the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of our nation. But it's all about wealth redistribution, right? It's all about getting rid of the middle class. That's what it's really about. This is a fight on class warfare. It always has been. So if you look at, roughly the 4.2 trillion kilowatt hours that we generate annually in this nation, only 21% of that comes from renewables. And I'm talking wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, those kind of things. And of that, only 10% comes from wind. Okay, the other 78, 79% comes from gas, coal, nuclear, of course, and a little bit from petroleum. So we've been doing these windmills for 50 years, and all we're getting is 10% out of this. It's like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me technology ain't got any better? Well, and a lot of this is because it's all so heavily subsidized by it, right? Through whatever channel it takes to get it. All right, and of course it's not being taxed. All right, so when we look at the siting of these things, whether it's nuclear, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, okay, so we have an industrial siting council. Okay, 6-member board appointed by the governor. Okay, well these guys so far, unless correct me if I'm wrong, guys, they haven't said no to any of these wind farms. Right? They haven't said no to them. And in all likelihood, they're going to say yes to all this nuclear stuff. Now, there's another potential plan for a nuclear plant in Goshen and also up in Campbell that we're kind of digging up, trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here? Has this been in the works for a while? And again, we're just kind of getting wind of this as we start digging and peeling back the onion on this stuff. So they can issue permits, right? But the other body that can is your county commissioners across the board. So they can write rules, whether they're offset, setback rules, whatever it is for land, whatever it is. Okay, but so many of them won't do it because they're afraid of being sued by these big corporations. So if you look at the WCCA, the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, and we'll take Chugwater for example, and that's Next Era Energy. Okay, the WCCA just happens to be a partner with Next Era. So it's like, wait a minute, so are county commissioners working for the folks? Or are they working for this partnership with these energy companies? You see what I'm saying? This is why we need to defund all these associations, these taxpayer-funded associations. But they could. So there is a group of folks we're working with around the state to say, okay, here are the rules. Okay, there's some great rules that came out of Western Colorado. And it's like, okay, let's use those and see if we can get these adopted in each county, right? And I'm all about decentralization of government, don't get me wrong, but there does come a point when we may have to do this legislatively. I can tell you, I know firsthand exactly how and exactly why North Carolina has some of the most stringent wind regulations in the nation, wind and toll structures. And I tell you, it wasn't easy to get that done. Okay, now I couldn't do that as military, it's a long story, but I tell you what, it was one of those things that had to be done, but it had to be done through the legislature to standardize it across the board. All right, let's see. Okay, so as we're looking at all this, and when I say we, there's just a great group of folks, we're all looking at this, and you know, our intention has never been about me, it's never been about me, it's never been about this group of people with whom we work, it's always been about us. Okay, it is about making this state the greatest state in the nation. So we look at all these geopolitical type of things. Okay, whether it's the climate change cult, the woke stuff in our schools, all these other things, our relationship with Taiwan and Japan, all the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia, how what we provide them, whether it's Trona, which you make soda ash, which you make windows out of, and those kind of things with these developing nations, and how that affects us and how that actually gets back down to the kitchen table. So something could happen in Thailand, somehow we get an effect over here. So we're kind of looking at all this. Folks, we don't see everything by any means, but it does help us determine, okay, what would we do if we ever had the opportunity to do it? Right? So we kind of put these policy folders together to make all this kind of stuff happen. But folks, I will tell you this, is that the number one thing that's missing out of our government, okay, particularly at the state level, is the lack of principled conservative leadership. Now, I will tell you that a principled conservative is one who has an unwavering is the key here, an unwavering belief in individual sovereignty, self-governance, the two things that our entire Constitution revolves around. American exceptionalism, no greater nation in the world, right? Proud to be an American. And absolute truth, as defined by our Creator. Because I tell you what, guys, they may not like it, but God makes the rules no matter what. That's just the way it is. But that is it. And that's what we need. We need folks at every level. City council, all the way up to the doggone governor, to our federally elected. That's what we need in there. And we've got to do it. We've got to make these changes all the way across the board. And I applaud you guys for trying to find candidates now. This is what we were working on in Fremont County just last week. We're working on it up in Park County with their chair. Okay, we're good friends. It's like, hey, look, we may have a candidate for county commissioner here, city council here. Let's take them in, let's vet them. Because this party, the Albany County Republican Party, is your party. And I mean, you have fantastic leadership here. And it'll do what you want it to do if you make your voices heard. It will. Okay, and with the leadership that Roxy's been providing, with Jerry, Mary Ann, and all you other guys who've been doing this, it really is a fantastic party. And I really do believe that we can, because we turned our legislature from purple to pink this last election. Okay, and we're going to try to get it red this next one. But I do believe that Albany County can go back into the red column. Not just pink. You guys are pink. So, and I know you're shrugging. Okay, so this, Jerry kind of hit on this, I'm almost done here. But there is no good time to run for political office. And I will tell you that right now. I mean, it's a complete pain in the butt. It just is. It really is. But I tell you, the reward is something that you can't quantify. All the incredible people we have in our state, You know, when we have so many common interests, and they've been looking for someone or an entity or a group, and that's why we started BCR, right? BCR Voter Initiatives, to give them an outlet. Okay, then we're finding all these other groups around the state, and we built this massive coalition around the state. It's just incredible, and it's given people an outlet. And as long as we're on board with what they're saying, shoot, we'll get behind them. You want this to push? We'll help you push it. You know, we'll help you. We'll do those kind of things. But it's one of those things that we have to, guys. We have a finite amount of time to make this happen. Okay, and we've got to do it. I truly believe that God's given us one last shot here. Okay, and we've got to take the initiative. We've got to make it happen. We've got to have those principled conservative values to make it happen. Okay, and we've got to believe that this is the greatest state in the greatest nation in the history of the world. We have to believe so. And I tell you, I mean, again, that's why I'm standing up here. Okay, now I gotta close with this, even though I'm strict here, and I apologize, that guy. But our 26th president, I'm such a fan of him. Okay, the Lion, you know, Teddy Roosevelt, he was a total stud, right? He's the only president we ever had that was a Medal of Honor winner. And there's a lot of fantastic speeches out there by so many of our presidents. But I will tell you, I think this was his best one, and he happened to be in Paris. And I know I've said this before, but I love sharing this. And it's really a passage, okay? But he happened to be over there in Paris. Somebody recognized him and said, "Hey, can you give a speech?" Now this is well before Facebook, right? I mean, even telephone was kind of a new thing. Well, this pickup game turned out to be like 15,000, 20,000 people that showed up in Paris. I mean, unless Trump comes here, I mean, you can't really do something like that, right? I mean, it was really amazing. But what he's talking about here is that it ended up being called the man in the arena. But it is talking about, you know, what it takes and why we have to do this to make this happen. Okay, because we all have to, guys. And I fully know that some people can't, you know, whatever the deal is. But it's the responsibility of every American, okay, to make this constitutional republic work, to get involved. It is our duty as an American. And I applaud you guys for being here because I know you're being involved in all of this. So this is what he says. Again, this is 115 years ago, April 23rd, 1910. And I quote, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows, in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place will never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." Guys, you gotta love that. You gotta love it. So we have to ask ourselves this, okay? If not me, then who? If not me, then who? In whom will I entrust my liberty? We have to do that. Guys, thank you very much for the invitation tonight. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Roxy. Good to be here. Marianne.
Okay, hey, I have some birthday cake for Jerry.